And joining us now, former minority leader in the Georgia House of Representatives, Stacey Abrams. She is the founder of Fair Fight Action and Fair Fight 2020 to promote fair elections across the country. She's also the producer of her new documentary on voting rights called All In, The Fight for Democracy. And today, by the way, is National Voter Registration Day. So let's start there, Stacey. A lot of people are concerned about the elections. Are they going to be carried out fairly? What can people do to feel comfortable about voting? And what should they do right now to get involved?
Well, first of all, don't panic. We're going to continue to hear disturbing news as the run-up to the election occurs. And the most important thing to remember is that our power lies in casting those ballots and not being distracted by the chaos or the tragedies. And that means make sure that you first have a plan to vote. If you go to allinforvoting.com, we give you all the information you need, whether you are just an average citizen, if you're a student, if you are in the military, if you're a returning citizen. You can make a plan to vote and make that plan to vote early. Because if we have a plan, we are not going to get distracted by the chaos. You can vote by mail if you need to. If that doesn't work in your state, then you can vote early. And if that doesn't work, you can know where to go on Election Day. But if we have a plan to vote, then we're not going to get distracted and we're not going to be dissuaded from making the change we need to make heading into 2021.
Are you concerned at all that President Trump may do something to try and sort of scorch the earth around the elections in some way or another? And are you hearing that concern from others?
Of course he's going to do something. That's his MO. His response to challenge is to create chaos, to try to bully people. He's going to try to cheat. But the antidote is not to lean into his crazy. The antidote is to hold on to our power as voters. And that's why today is National Voter Registration Day. It's the point of entry. Make certain that you are registered. And if you think you're registered, check your registration. Go to allinforvoting.com or vote.org and you can check your registration and make your plan. We have to stop playing by Donald Trump's strange rules of engagement. We know who he is, but we have to remember who we are. We're an American democracy. We're a republic that uses democratic values to make our choices, and those values say that your voice counts and your vote counts.
Stacey, it's Willie Geist. Good to see you this morning. You may have seen a new poll just this morning from the AJC that shows the race for president in the state of Georgia tied, statistically tied. Also, that Senate race between Perdue and Jon Ossoff, statistically tied as well. So the last couple of cycles, as you know very well, 2018 had good turnout for an off-year election. 2016 had historic turnout in the state of Georgia. How motivated are people in the state of Georgia this time around? And what are you telling Vice President Biden about what he needs to do to win there?
Well, we are excited about the very significant investment being made in Georgia. And for a presidential campaign, this is the first time in recent memory. But we have to remember that President Obama lost Georgia by 8 points. Hillary Clinton, Secretary Clinton, lost by 5 points. I came within 1.4% of winning the governor's race despite the controversial voter suppression. And we had record turnout, the highest turnout for any Democrat in the history of the state of Georgia. And that was before 750,000 additional voters signed up to vote in the state of Georgia, 45% of whom are under the age of 30, 49% of whom are people of color. And one of the takeaways from this AJC poll is that Joe Biden is winning 31% of white voters. We hit the highest margin of white voter turnout in our election, and he's exceeding even our numbers. That means we are on a path to victory to deliver 16 electoral votes, 2 Senate seats, adding someone else to Congress, and I believe flipping the House of Representatives in the state of Georgia.
Yeah, for people who haven't seen it, that new number this morning from the AJC, 47-47 in the presidential race. I want to ask you about the Supreme Court vacancy left by the passing of Ruth Bader Ginsburg on Friday night. What is your view of how Democrats should approach this, and what can they do exactly? It's within the president's constitutional authority, of course, to nominate someone, and within Mitch McConnell's authority to get a vote on the table. It looks like he has the votes. So what recourse do you think Democrats have here?
Democrats have to do what is required by the Constitution. Advise, and that means holding accountable any nominee that's put forward who's going to undermine the values of reproductive choice, of the right to vote, of the right to work not for less, but to actually have labor rights. We need Supreme Court justices who actually see all of us and invest in all of us and uphold the laws to protect all of us. Democrats are going to have that responsibility regardless of when this vote is held. And we are going to have to make certain that as we go through this process, we don't allow this to distract us from the reality that this is one branch of government. But if we can take the White House, if we can take the Senate, then we can set the table by passing laws to actually settle some of these issues once and for all. Passing H.R. 4, the Voting Rights Advancement Act, passing law that makes certain that we protect the right to reproductive choice for all Americans, regardless of the state you live in. There are legislative solutions to many of these challenges, and we cannot be so distracted by one seat, although it was held by an extraordinary woman, that we forget that we've got three branches of government we've got to focus on in 2020.
Stacey, Gene Robinson is here with a question for you. Gene?
Stacey, good morning. Good to talk to you. So on National Voter Registration Day, is there a group, a demographic group who's underrepresented in the registration rolls who you're particularly working on, African American men or women, Hispanic men or women? Is there any group that you really want to focus on?
Well, I know in Georgia there's a deep focus on African American men, because we know that that's one group whose voices have not been heard as frequently. But across this country, we've got to meet people where they are. If you're in Arizona, the predominant group we need to be focusing on making certain that Latinos have access to the right to vote. If you're in Texas, if you're in Wisconsin, our responsibility as politicians is to make certain that the communities that are who are underserved understand that we see them and want them to be engaged. That's what's so exciting about the Biden campaign. They are meeting each state and each constituency where they are. They take no one for granted. And this campaign is doing the work of investing in those communities. What we did in 2018 was we didn't have a select group that we wanted to go after. We centered communities of color, but we reached out to everyone, because you only win elections when you build a coalition of the willing. And that means people who are willing to believe that you can make life better. And that means you can't pick your voters. You've got to let your voters know who you are so they can pick you.
Katty Kay.
Stacey, I spoke to a Democratic strategist in North Carolina last week who was suggesting that she felt Joe Biden needed more visibility in the state. I wonder what you would like Joe Biden to be doing now, given that Donald Trump clearly has decided to go back to rallies every night and he's holding these big rallies around the country and in swing states. Would you like the Biden campaign to be more visible? Would you like them to come and visit Georgia? Would you like them to be holding rallies? How much more could they be doing? Should they be doing?
I want the Biden campaign to do what they're doing now, which is believing in the value of human life and not putting people at risk simply for the self-congratulation of a rally. What's happening across this country, and we're seeing this reflected in the poll numbers in every single battleground state, Biden is doing well because people believe that he will actually help save our lives, that he takes seriously the 200,000 Americans who have perished due to the incompetence of Donald Trump and his refusal to acknowledge the legitimacy of the challenges we face. We need someone for president who is competent, who has the moral vision and has a plan to serve us all. And that's what we're seeing. And so I'm less concerned about the comparative between a Biden or a Trump campaign, because Trump is speaking to the very people who've always supported him, and Biden is building a new coalition that will lead to victory in November.
All right, Stacey Abrams, thank you very much.
Thanks for checking out MSNBC on YouTube, and make sure you subscribe to stay up to date on the day's biggest stories. And you can click on any of the videos around us to watch more from Morning Joe and MSNBC. Thanks so much for watching.